China says it has successfully landed a spacecraft on the far side of the moon. The mission aims to collect the first rock and soil samples from the little-known lunar hemisphere. The landing marks a win for China as an international race for the moon is gathering pace. The US, India and others are hoping to exploit lunar resources to sustain long-term bases on the moon. For more, let's cross over to Keith Cowing. He's the editor of NASAWatch.com. Keith, how big of a deal is this landing?
Well, it's a big deal in that it's the second time anybody has landed anything on the far side of the moon. China did it the first time. It's something that we here in the U.S. had talked about doing half a century ago. And my little moon here, the side that we see, we know quite a bit about. The side we don't see, the far side, we know something about because we have spacecraft orbiting it, but we've never brought samples back. And there's a lot of questions as to why the two different sides of the moon look that different. And this mission will help answer some of those questions.
So why are so many countries racing to reach the far side of the moon?
Well, it's interesting. I'm in my late 60s, and I grew up during the Apollo era, and there was a song called Everyone's Gone to the Moon. And it was sort of silly because there really is only us and the Russians. Well, the capability to go to the moon is now something that is not just one or two countries. It's many countries and companies. And so, you know, the threshold for doing this is a lot lower. You have India and Israel and Japan and China and, you know, pick a country. Pakistan now has a satellite in orbit. So, you know, if you can do something, and going to the moon is often seen as like the gold or platinum standard for a country as something to accomplish. And now everybody's lining up to try and do it themselves.
And so where are these other countries in their progress, the US specifically?
Well, the US, it's interesting here because some people say, well, China's going to the moon, they'll be first. Well, we were first half a century ago. But here's the interesting thing that I want your audience to know. Just because we did something doesn't mean we can just do it again. And we've had difficulties getting back to the moon. But just because we did it 50 years ago and China, whoever doing it now, 2/3 of the people alive today have never seen a human walk on the surface of another world. I did. You didn't. And for everybody that's going to see it, it'll be like doing the same thing again for the first time. It'll be the first moon landing for most of the people on Earth. And I think it's going to have an impact on people, not just in America or Russia, many places around the world. China has 1 billion people. India has 1 billion people. India is sending missions there. So this is becoming something where we, the people of Earth, are going back, not just one country or another.
China's moon landing now on the far side of the moon. What does that mean in terms of international space cooperation?
Well, again, back in the day, it was either us or the Russians, and we were competing. There really wasn't any collaboration. These days, you have, for example, this Chinese mission has Swedish and Italian and French and Pakistani stuff on it. American missions have stuff from other countries. You have collaboration, you have cooperation, and you have competition. And, oh, by the way, there's companies that have resources that are larger than the space agencies of many countries. So they can go do kind of what they want. So you have a multipolar, I mean, we're in the globalized world that we're in now. There's many players with many different agendas. And out of the mix comes something that's more interesting. The more ways there are to go to the moon and the more reasons to go, the more we go to the moon. And the more we go to the moon, well, the more we go to the moon.
Thank you very much for your analysis. That's Keith Cowing, the editor of NASAWatch.com.
My pleasure.